Hello and welcome to the Pirate Podcast number 4. I am Brian Jennings. I'm here today with Mr. Janssen. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I can't think of a better thing to do on a Thursday afternoon.
All right. Do you want to tell me a little bit about how the girls' golf season went this year?
So this year's girls golf season, we had one of the best seasons we've had in many, many years, which is saying something because we've had some really solid girls golf teams over the last 7 years. We actually won our 7th straight conference championship. And it was special this year because we moved up to the bigger conference. So it was special to still see that our girls can compete against some of those larger schools. Usually when we would compete against schools our size, most of the tournaments we played, we would finish in the top 2 almost every time. Commonly we would have one of our girls individually finish either first or second. Bailey Silcott, our senior, finished in the top 10 almost every tournament we played in. And then Ella Green finished commonly in the top 10. And then our third best golfer, Lily Ricketts, finished commonly in the top 15.
All right. So I think we saw that with a lot of other sports. Moving up a conference did make the competition harder because now we're going against schools like Liberty, schools like Staley that are considerably bigger than us. But I do think it is good to look that some of our sports teams are able to compete on that level. And you think our golf team was able to meet the standard?
Yeah, and that's the thing. We play a lot of teams in the higher conferences, actually. So while we're in the white conference, we're commonly playing against the red conference teams like the Liberty Norths and the Staleys and some of those teams as well. And while they generally have a deeper team because they have more of a pool to draw from, our top few girls tend to compete with them, and when we play in those tournaments with the larger metro area schools, we do tend to finish in the top half of the pack with a school our size. That's kind of saying something.
That's impressive. So, including that, what would you say are some challenges you had to overcome this season?
So, team-wise challenges, we tend to get some. It's a very individual sport, but then we get pockets of good friends, and sometimes it's difficult to really develop that whole team camaraderie, and that takes a lot of work to try and develop that, forcing them essentially to work with other players that they might not necessarily work with outside of golf practice. They maybe don't associate them with very much, and so we force them to work together and then form those bonds by working together in those types of processes. On the individual side of things, golfers, a lot of times the biggest challenge they have to overcome is realizing that every shot is going to matter in the long run. And sometimes what they do is they'll have a bad shot and they'll focus on it, and then that'll throw off their next shot. And if they continue focusing on those bad shots, it just piles up and they're not able to recover. So having a really short memory on some of those things, I think people call it a defensive back memory, right? Defensive backs, they don't make every play every time. So they got to be able to forget that and then make the next play. And golf is very similar to that situation. You're going to have bad shots. It's how you recover from those bad shots and how you can then move along in the round.
Was there any time during the season that maybe someone had a bad shot but then was able to come back?
Yeah, we had a few times. Actually, at state golf this year, there were a couple of different times where we don't play a lot of courses with out of bounds and trouble. And then when we go to state, we play in a lot of country club type courses. And those country club courses have a whole lot more trouble that we're not used to playing with. So we've had some out of bounds shots on those, and you have to go replay your previous shot and add 2 strokes. So it's a real mental challenge when that happens, especially if it's close and it's a judgment call and everybody has to come together, and you get maybe a rules official that comes in and says, "I'm sorry, but this is a penalty," or whatever, and then it can really throw off a person's mental state. And golf is a very mental sport.
Yeah. So on that topic of state golf, what was it like having a female place in state for the first time?
So it was really exciting, and I was glad to see who it was. Bailey Silcott, her mother was actually the first girls golfer at our school ever. Her mother's junior year, she actually played boys golf because there was no girls team. And then her senior year, she created a team essentially. And what was even more exciting was the place that Bailey placed, the Columbia Country Club, was actually the same course that her mother played state golf at. So it was kind of this. It was an interesting little mix of nostalgia and then getting over that hump of never having a medalist. at the course that her mother was the first girls golfer to ever play at for our school. It was kind of an interesting mix of just history.
What are the chances of that? That's crazy.
Slim, because there's probably 8 to 10-ish courses that are state course hosts. And so just the odds of it being that and having the whole everything line up like that, it was kind of an interesting little development.
So like every year it's a different course they switch it?
Yeah, so one kid in 4 years should never see the same course if they go to state. Now, most times we don't have people that make state 4 years in a row. Next year, hopefully we have our first 4-year state qualifier. Lily Ricketts has a chance to be a 4-year state qualifier next year. And then Ella Green, our current sophomore, she's qualified 2 years, so she'll have a chance in a couple years to be the second 4-year state qualifier. But that's just another little piece of history that we might be kicking up here in the next couple of years.
That's impressive. So we're going to switch it up. We're going to go a little forward in time and look in the future a little bit. What are you looking forward to most for boys golf this year?
So the boys season, I'd say what we're looking forward to is we've got a couple of seniors that I know have shown some growth over the summer, but seeing that growth they've actually made. Our boys team is actually really, really young, at least when it comes to returners. We have, I believe, 2 or 3 returning seniors. One's our number 1 player, Parker Amos, who's been a consistent varsity player for all 4 years, and he did qualify for state last year. And then we've got actually a really young team. We were really heavy on freshmen. We only had 1 sophomore last year, so we only have possibly 1 junior returner. And then we have, I think it was like 7 freshmen last year that are going to be sophomores. But I know I've seen many of those sophomores out on the course getting better. And we've actually had reports that some of them are shooting in the 80s, which is a pretty solid score for a sophomore. So hopefully those sophomores, all the work they've been putting in is going to show up in the competition season once we come around to the next side, and just filling in that varsity roster with some solid players, because one of our seniors actually is graduating midterm, so he's not going to be able to play golf, which is going to be a little bit of it's going to drop our scores or raise our scores a little bit, because he's a pretty good golfer, Carson Childers, but he decided to graduate midterm, so and that's his choice. But getting the rest of that varsity roster filled in with players that can be solid, because I don't believe we've ever brought a boys team to state. We've had 3 players qualify for state in the past, but we've never had a 4-player team qualify for state on the boys' side. So hopefully some of the work those sophomores put in can materialize. And we tend to get some senior boys that decide to come out as seniors that, if they're athletic, we can actually work with them and get them to the point where they can contribute on the varsity squad. We've had it over the years. Last year, Dylan Mitchell and Jake Kingery came out and were able to use their athletic ability to be able to golf well enough to play for our varsity boys golf team.
All right. So would you say your goal this year is to maybe like create a team and fill in the spots like you were saying?
That's definitely always part of our goal. It's always in the back of our mind. Our main goals are usually to win conference. That's usually one of our goals, and we're almost always competitive on the conference level. When you start mixing in some of the schools from the west side of the state, east side of the state, there are a lot of private schools over there that are our size. So they tend to have a stronger golf program. So it's hard to compete on the state level as a team for either of our seasoned boys and girls. But yes, really just getting those varsity numbers filled in, and hopefully when we compete against the biggest suburban schools, we're looking to be in the top half. When we compete against them, we want our team score, to be in the top half. Because if we're in the top half of the big schools, we're going to be toward the top when we compete against schools our size. Because we play class 4 boys golf, and there's 5 classes.
All right. So is golf one of those sports that's usually dominated by private schools?
Yes, it tends to be dominated by private schools or the more affluent districts, because a lot of those kids live on golf courses and they've been getting lessons. And golf is a sport that you can be good at without a whole lot of lessons. You can rely on athletic ability and be good. But if you really want to be great, you need individual, private, professional lessons. Coach Short, the head coach, and I, we can get kids to the point where they can be competitive and a functional golfer But to get down to the nitty gritty, you really need a private coach. And that's where those private schools and the more affluent populations have a benefit of being able to be a lot better at golf.
Which I think makes it a lot more impressive that our team is still able to be second half competitive, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really cool. So we're gonna, for the last little section, we're gonna talk about you a little bit. What made you want to start coaching golf?
So it's actually a kind of interesting story. I was coaching girls basketball at my old school, and after the game, we were talking to the athletic director, and he asked our head coach. He said, "Hey, would you like to be the assistant boys golf coach?" And he already had a job. He was coaching softball, so the two assistant coaches, me and the other guy, we were surprised because we didn't think golf was going to be a open position for an assistant golf coach. It didn't seem like a position that was going to be a thing. Mm-hmm. And so essentially the athletic director said the first one to my office the next morning can get the job. Thankfully, I got to school really, really early that morning and made sure I got the golf job because the other gentleman had to coach track. And no offense to the track team, love you, you're great, but I can't watch jogging all day. I wanted to go to the course and go play golf because I really enjoy golf. And then I transferred schools, and there was not an assistant position here. And then one day I saw it come across the board, and I asked a couple of kids in my class that live in the neighborhood because I needed somebody to take care of my kids in the afternoon. I said, "Hey, if I get this job, will you kind of help me get my kids to their activities?" And thankfully, living in district, we've got a lot of good kids that are willing to do that kind of stuff for their teachers. So, I had a kid in class, they said, "Yeah, I'll be able to do that." So then I applied, and having 13 years of experience at a previous school made me the obvious candidate to do it here.
That's cool. So were you a big golfer beforehand?
I did play high school golf. I was not necessarily a stellar high school golfer. I was a JV squad golfer, but I enjoyed it. So it was just one thing that I could continue doing. And our head coach, Coach Short coached baseball and football, and he was all the big ticket sports. And then the golf coaching job came available, and Coach Dorman, the former athletic director, just asked him, "Hey, is that something you'd be interested in?" He's grown as a coach over the years. He's been doing it for, I think, probably 10 years here, and he's produced some very, very good golfers coming out of here. So we've been very lucky with some of the golfers we've had, but we've also learned how to grow them as well in-house.
Do you still golf now?
I do golf now. Most of our boys varsity golfers are able to beat me at golf. I can usually beat them off the tee because being the size of the person I am, I can hit the ball a little ways. But then once it gets around the green, my size betrays me because the ball is so far from my hands that it gets a little dodgy at times.
Who's winning in a match, you in high school or you now?
Oh, me now, by a long shot. In high school, the equipment I had was, I had Walmart special golf clubs. Now that I can afford better equipment, my game has improved a little bit. But also I have the patience, and I don't let bad shots ruin my round. I've grown as just mentally being able to come underneath. If you get just stuck behind a tree, I know how to get out and then save the rest of the hole instead of doing something crazy.
That's cool. All right, I think that's all I got for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.